topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready for Insights to Incite? Ready or not, it's showtime. Now get ready to listen in and watch right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join us and together we will escape the mundane. Insights to Incite, here is your host, Brandon Lawson.
Hello. Yes. It has been said, the history of mankind will probably show that no people has ever risen above its religion, and man's spiritual history will positively demonstrate that no religion has ever been greater than its idea of God. So, what do you think of that? What do you think of that? Here, let me repeat it again. The history of mankind will probably show that no people has ever risen above its religion, and man's spiritual history will positively demonstrate that no religion has ever been greater than its idea of God. As we can see, that comes from the pastor and author A.W. Tozer out of his book, The Knowledge of the Holy. So, how is your state of religion or your state of Christianity? Anyone? I share this because it's something we might want to consider. Friends, this is Brandon Lawson, your host and presenter for Insights to Incite. Today is March 3rd, and it is in today's show that we begin a new series of lessons titled The L's to L, Humanity with Him. Each week as we go through an additional lesson, the L word for that particular week will build off the previous L words to create for us sort of like a upward climb on a ladder. And in today's message, we will look at how one's like for God, or how one's depth of gladness and goodness for, of, and toward Him will directly impact his or her likelihood of following Him or being with Him for His cause. And in addition, I want to try to illustrate to you, or I hope to illustrate, how this will also spill over into other areas of our lives. Yes, this will affect our lives in general, not just in your spiritual walk, because you might think you're not spiritual, you're not of a faith background, but nonetheless, your idea, your concept of who God is and how you perceive Him to be, your perception of Him, will directly impact your life. And I want to bring that out. So, how many of you even given any thought to this question as to whether or not you like God? Anyone? And I want to make sure you hear me clearly. I said, have you given any thought as to whether you like God? Not as to whether you are like God, but whether you like Him. You see Him in a favorable light. I think those who do not like God, who have a dislike for him, are probably more apt to think of this than those who are in good standings or, regular attendees of a church, a local congregation. Yeah, I mean, in fact, many of you who might be members of a congregation might actually be quick to answer this question with a yes. You know, you may not have really thought as to whether you like God, but as you consider the question, you'd be quick to say, yes, yes, I like him. If that's you, I would like to caution you or like you to stop and to reconsider, ask yourself, do I really like God? And to get a better idea of what the real answer is, what would your life's eval say? Let's say you look past over the last 3.5 years. What would your life say? What would it be a testament to? I mean, what have you done over the last 3.5 years? Or maybe it's something you've abstained from doing. And how have you been when you have been under fire or you've been brought into some kind of difficult, unpleasant circumstances of such? I mean, do you hear his voice? Do you even know the voice of God? If he spoke to you, how did he speak? Well, friends, it is these questions, and probably won't be able to hit at all of them, but at least a few of these questions that I want us to look at, I want us to consider. And as we look into this and consider it, to also consider what it is we might find and going through this. So, again, how often have you thought about whether you like God or not? Do you actually enjoy him? Do you enjoy being in his presence? Maybe another way to ask this is, how vital is it? Of how great of importance is it that you spend time with him each day? And if you do spend time with him, what does this look like? If you were to tell me or tell someone else, if your words were to paint a picture of what this looked like for you, what would this time with God look like? I mean, are you one that would say, since God never leaves us, whatever I'm doing, if nobody else is around, it's my time with him? Where you could be cooking, you could be doing whatever, busy with, your attention's elsewhere. But being that you're not with anyone and God doesn't leave you, you say that's your time with him. Is that what you consider your time with God each day? Or are you deliberate in really making this time to bask in the presence of him, to soak up his goodness, to take him in? What does this look like to you? Well, there's some things I want to share with you today that I believe are important to really having the proper time alone with God. There are 3 constancies, is what I like to call them, 3 constancies of what time alone with God looks like, or what your time alone with God should have. But before we get into that, we're going to step away to our first commercial break, and we'll be right back right after this.
Are you on the edge of your seat and wanting more? Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite with Brandon Lawson right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or by calling him at 513-708-1517. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now, once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
So, as mentioned before we stepped away to our commercial break, I believe there are three constancies that should be there, that you should have, that characterize your time alone with God. And, and these, maybe I shouldn't say should be there, because these are just three things that should hold true, maybe is the way of putting it, because the fact of the matter is the three that I want to hint at are things that we should be without. So as we consider our time alone with God, I think the first thing we should be without is distraction. This should be a time of quiet, peaceful serenity. Time where you're, don't have a bunch of noise in the background. You don't have the, things that are distracting you or pulling your attention to them. So this is a time to be inactive as well. Because if you're active doing something, other than your time with Him, then you're distracted by it. So this is a time to be inactive. This should be a time where you sit quietly and do nothing. Instead, just be still. Be still and revere Him and His holiness. We find a very common passage of scripture that speaks to being still. In Psalm 46, verse 10, it says, "Be still and know that I am God." And then the latter part of that verse goes on to say, "I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." While that whole psalm there, which is 11 verses, it speaks more to talking about the Israelites being so much when they're in battle, they try to take it upon themselves. And there's some battles that we're not meant to fight because we would lose every time. This is where we need to be still and know that He is God. And that is upon seeing Him go to work and Him defeat what seems like a insurmountable, task, or complete an insurmountable task, or defeat where the odds are so stacked against it, there ain't no way we could come out in victory. And yet we do because of Him. That's why it says that He will be exalted among the nations. He will be exalted in the earth. The KJV even says that the heathens will exalt Him, which is like those who are not of the Jewish family, the Gentile family, the pagans, if you will. But basically what it's saying is even those who didn't believe in God will then exalt Him, because it will be undeniable of who He is and His power, His presence. But if the Jews keep trying to fight it in their own way, their own battle, through their own strength, they'll end up miserable time and time again. They'll be defeated. So it's to be still and know that I am God, is what He tells them. But in this passage, we're not necessarily even talking about fighting a battle. And so while that passage, it does sort of speak over to that context, if you will, it still is useful for what we're talking about. Is there's times we just need to be still rather than be on the go constantly. Because if we're on the go, our minds is put forth on this and that, we cannot really give him our time, because our time is devoted to someone else, something else. So we should just sit quietly, to be still and revere him in his holiness. And we can do this by meditating on scripture. And there's other ways as well. Spend time in prayer. I mean, there's various ways to go about this, but for the sake of our lesson, I just want to say that this should be a time that is characterized by not having any distractions. That's the first one. Then, as we consider this, the second thing is this should be a time and a place that's without disruption. While not only we should be without distraction from various noises or being active and doing something, in the same light, we should turn off our phones, turn off all forms of media and communication. Give this as time to be with him. Go to a place where you will not be interrupted or disrupted by anyone else. Or perhaps this isn't so much a place you go to as much as it is a time that you set aside. Because it may be hard to go somewhere where nobody's going to show up or there's never going to be any noise. But if you can set out a time, maybe it's 4:00 in the morning before the kids get up. You're an early riser, so you do it then. But I think this might fall into more of a time slot where you can be without disruption. Then, say third is without decoration. And you might wonder what I mean by that. What are we talking about? Without decoration. Well, when I speak of this, much like that place that's without distraction or without disruption, it should be without decoration, such as a room. Maybe there's a room you have, small room in the house or somewhere, a study area, where you don't have anything on the wall. No plaques, no pictures, no certificates, no shelving units, nothing that would distract you, just a chair where you can sit alone right there. Or maybe it's in a hallway, where, you think, it may be hard for you to think of a room. You may not have a room that is without something on the wall, but maybe there's just a short hallway that, you can sit there. You don't want any decorations that's going to draw your attention to them. Because again, that'd be like a distraction. This is time to be alone and to be presented upward to him. But, just the walls themselves and a chair to sit on, but nothing to muse over or to occupy your mind with. And in this state of emptiness and solitude, you can sit quietly and rest in him. And as you rest, you can receive what he wants to say. You can allow your mind to empty and be filled with him. So, this stuff here is pretty straightforward. I mean, a simple, thing you say, seems quite simple. I mean, while it is in all reality quite simple, yet still, for most of us, it's quite difficult. Yes, it's one of those instances where what we're being, what's being asked of us, or would take to do this is not at all daunting. Yet, nonetheless, we have trouble following through. But that beckons the question, why? Why is something that in all reality is so simple actually ends up being so difficult? Well, there are a few reasons that I'd like to suggest as to why, this is something we have a hard time doing. And in light of these, may I suggest to you the 3 inhibitors that invade? Yes, the 3 inhibitors that invade. These inhibitors invade our time and our space with Him. And the first one is our culture. And how does our culture invade? It's not physically that they're pressing in on us. It's they've invaded our minds. We've been shaped in such a way that, there's a high value put on busyness. Be busy, busy, busy. No, you're wasting your time if you're not doing anything. You're not to be lazy. You're not to be idle. And while that is true, we should not be idle. That is indeed a fact. Being idle for prolonged periods of time is actually unhealthy. Yet, in the same way, going lengthy stretches of time without rest and solitude is unhealthy. Too much busyness, too much is, well, it's too much. Yes. And it was Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, who actually recognized this truth. If you would like to follow along, I'm going to read from Exodus chapter 18, and I'm going to begin at the very beginning of the chapter, verse 1. It says, "And Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, that the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back, with her 2 sons, of whom the name of one was Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a foreign land. And the name of the other was Eliezer, for he said, the God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness, where he was encamped at the mountain of God." Now, skipping down to verse 13. "And so it was on the next day that Moses sat to judge the people. And the people stood before Moses from morning until evening. So when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he had did for the people, he said, What is this thing that you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit, and all the people stand before you from morning until evening? And Moses said to his father-in-law, Because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a difficulty, they come to me, and I judge between one and another. And I make known the statutes of God and his laws. So Moses' father-in-law said to him, The thing that you do is not good. Both you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out. For this thing is too much for you. You are not able to perform it by yourself. Listen now to my voice. I will give you counsel, and God will be with you. Stand before God for the people, so that you may bring the difficulties to God. And you shall teach them the statutes and the laws, and show them the way in which they must walk, and the work they must do. Moreover, you shall select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s and rulers of 10s, and let them judge the people at all times. Then it will be that every great matter they shall bring to you, but every small matter they themselves shall judge. So it will be easier for you, for they will bear the burden with you. If you do this thing and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all this people will also go to their place in peace. In this situation, it wasn't a matter of Moses stopping and not doing anything, but nonetheless, he was not to carry such a load, because to be busy and to take too much responsibility or to do too many things is burdensome. It can wear you down. It can affect your health spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and in many cases, financially. And it most definitely hurts your relationships. When you're wore out, you're shorter with people. You don't have near the patience. You don't have the peace. You're taken away from your loved ones, your family who wants to be dear to you, hardly has any time. So you can see where, you know, being overly busy is not the thing to do. Yet that's what our culture is. They may not tell you that you're to be overly busy, but they're constantly sending this message of being busy. You had time, you could have did that stuff, but you didn't. And you may be ridiculed or judged for not using up the time that you could have for something you didn't, basically doing nothing. They accuse you of being lazy. You need to do a better job managing your time, they say. But while we shouldn't take time for granted, at the same time, we need to allow time to rest. And if we're so busy, how will we give God the proper time that he deserves? So the first inhibitor is our culture. Our culture drills that in us. The second is our nature. We, being finite mortals who don't have forever to get things done and to accomplish certain feats, we place upon ourselves great pressure to get at it, to see to it that it's completed by such and such time. This has its way of creating for us a frantic pace. We're constantly on the move. Go here, get this done. You're going nonstop, left and right. Well, this too will hinder us. And moreover, besides going nonstop, creating a frantic pace and stressing us out, what it also does is this has its way of extending over to our expectations and our perception of him, of who and how he is. We know we are not God, yet still we have the tendency to view him through the same lens that we see ourselves and other people around us. Yes. Well, it has been said, God never hurries. There are no deadlines against which he must work. God never hurries. There are no deadlines against which he must work. Only to know this is to quiet our spirits and relax our nerves. Yet, our nature of knowing we're short on time, we're not going to be here forever, that has its way of causing us to rush, to want to squeeze as much in as possible. And we even see this, we tend to cast God in the same light, even though we intellectually, consciously, we know that he is, that he is not bound by time. We tend to impose this in our in the way we see him. And what I'm referring to in one instance would be we can see this in the scope of our prayers. We pray for that person we care about, that loved one. And when he doesn't swiftly intervene to rectify the situation or to heal that person or to make the situation better, what do? We become pressed. We often become pressed to pray harder. We become impatient. We get stressed. That's the opposite of what we just read. Only to know that God is not bound by time can we, relax. Can we calm our spirits and relax our nerves? But our very nature has its way of coming in and imposing upon us this pressure. We only have so much time, or, God, where are you? And so it's bad enough that it has its way of being demoralizing to us, but it then in turn colors our perspective of him. And we get this distorted view of who he is, which affects every area of our life. It spills over. Then third, I would say that our future, you can see this somewhat in light of what we just said, but also differently. Our future from the standpoint, once again, that we are finite beings. We know that we're not going to be here forever, that our time on earth, this life, will be coming to a close. We only have so much time left, and while this might be something we deem as good because, well, we don't want to live in this corrupt world forever. Yet, at the same time, while we are here, we want to make the most of the time that we have. And so, once again, this pressure mounts. We see this. The pressure mounts upon us to get things done, to accomplish this, to accomplish that. And as we pressure ourselves, and at times end up being pressured by others, we insert and assert ourselves in the matter. And what do I mean? Well, the way we insert and assert ourselves is, as we do this, we, being that we only have so much time left, we got to get it done. But we insert ourselves in the picture, and we work out of our own strength. We start to push our own agenda and also work from our own strength, our own means to make it happen. And that is where we fall short time and time again. All this does is create more stress and more unrest, to where we lose our peace. We lose our patience. And in turn, it negatively impacts. It's a detriment to our relationships. It's a detriment to our well-being. Us being pulled left and right at every turn. It is, being pulled left and right, or just, taking upon ourselves to go and do this to accomplish. We wear ourselves out. We wear ourselves thin. Our lives suffer. And what we see here is, this, as we go about this, it's the process of trying to be responsible, upright citizens. And by the mere fact that we go and we do, usually it's got a good motive behind it. It's not meant to be a negative impact or have a downturn to it, but not wanting to order others to do it, but we'll be upright, responsible citizens. We go forth and we do it. we take it upon ourselves. Yet what happens is we we halt or hinder our progress, and instead end up digressing as we interfere with the work God wants to do. Yes, most notably that work being the work within us. Because God does more work within us than he does around us. God's work is generally within the soul of the people. And then in turn, the outer world changes. He does not generally affect the outer world to, to, to affect the inner, unless we get to such dire straits, such, a bad place that he has to strike us with a plague, a pandemic. Perhaps it's a one of those you know catastrophic weather events, a tsunami. But usually, God, from the day-to-day standpoint, he works within us, and then in turn it affects the outer. Only when it's taking drastic means with a slam of a tornado or some other catastrophic event does he work on the outer to affect the inner. And when we think of him working within us, and or not working within us, but we think of how we impose our own self into it and trying to make things right, or how we work out of our own strength. There's a quote here that gives us a glimpse into this. It's been said the reason why many are troubled, still seeking, still making little forward progress, is because they haven't yet come to the end of themselves. We're still trying to give orders and interfering with God's work within us. So it's like until we come to the end of ourselves, where we acknowledge that we can't do it alone, and not just acknowledge the words spoken, but through basically a lot of times it's when we've exhausted all our efforts, we throw our hands up to God and say, "Take it, take the wheel. I can't do it anymore. I'm defeated." That's when we truly let him intervene. Otherwise, we may pray for him to intervene, but often we have this natural tendency to also want to interject. It's only normal. It's who we are. It's our nature. Yet, we get in the way of God. We hinder our progress. We halt our progress. And in turn, instead of progressing, we end up digressing. Friends, we must remove self from the equation. And if not remove it altogether, at least remove it from the center. This world does not revolve around us. It's not about me, myself, and I. No. The fact of the matter is, we need to be intentional. We need to be intentional about making him center of it all. Making, him central, where he's the center of all we do. But how will we ever make him central to all we do, to all we are, if we cannot even make time for him? If we cannot ever make time for him, especially, there's plenty of us who will make time for him, may go to a church service. But what about making time to be alone with him? Time. If we will not do this, then, we won't ever make him the center of it all. So we must stop what we're doing, where we're spending, and we need to give ourselves to being with him. And sadly, you are very likely to offend many. Many friends, neighbors, and even family. But let me say to you, do it anyway. We cannot give our friends, our family, our neighbors, not give any of creation to be a greater priority than the Creator. And we find a classic example of this in the Gospel of Luke. I'm going to be reading out of Luke chapter 10. Just going to read the last 5 verses of the chapter. It is starting in verse 38. Now it happened as they went that he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she approached him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me. And Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed. And Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her. As we see, Mary offended Martha by not helping. But did you see how Jesus responded in those last 2 verses? Luke 10:41, 42. He said, and Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part which will not be taken away from her. So there we have it. Friends, you may offend others, but that's something they'll have to live with, and maybe in turn they won't be offended. They'll see you have something better and want to do what you're doing. Give your time to him. We'll be right back.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or by calling him at 513-708-1517. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
So today we looked at why it is important to be alone with God and how it impacts our lives, and truly every area of our lives is impacted by it. And we also looked at how and why we have a difficult time doing this. And now I want to bring us back to that question I asked at the beginning of today's show. Do you like God? Do you actually enjoy being with him? Do you enjoy being in his presence? The fact is, if we truly enjoy being with him, then our determination to spend ourselves both with him and on him, spend our time with him, our money on him, given to his causes. If we truly enjoy him, then our determination will be all the more stronger to do this. So can you and I truly say, can we say, along with David, King David, King David told us, or he said, it's written for us in Psalm 122, verse 1. He said, "And I was glad when they said to me, 'Let us go to the house of the Lord.'" Well, friends, I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to look deep within yourself. Ask, who are you? Who am I? You know, look at your calendar and your expense report. Where is it that you are giving yourself? What are you giving yourself to? Who are you giving yourself to? You know, consider where your time and your money's going. And also consider what and who you will cancel out. There's certain things that we can do away with. We don't need to be giving our time to that. We don't need our funds to go there. Consider what and who you will cancel out. Give yourself to Him. Enjoy Him and enjoy being in His presence. Let's together declare, as King David did in Psalm 27, verse 4. He said, "One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek Him in His temple." Friends, we've pretty much come to the end of the show. Got just a couple minutes left here, and just want to encourage you to make time to be alone, without distraction. Yes, without disruption, without decoration, without anything else other than Him. Give yourself to Him. You'll find that it will help you immensely. I'm confident of it. Just the peace of taking the time to sit and do nothing, that alone, and then to be able to take Him in is only an added bonus, an added benefit of what will come as He speaks to you, enlightens you. It'll give you also that opportunity to clear your mind, to allow you to work through your feelings, to get clarity rather than suppressing your feelings. It'll allow your body to heal itself. It will not constantly be playing catch up, trying to recover from this, from that, from that, from that. Taking time to do nothing will allow you to heal, will allow you to get right, will allow you to be right. Friends, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. And as you may know, we're here every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern. And as I always say, you may not agree with everything, and there may not be, you may not see everything eye to eye. Yet still, I want to invite you to join me here on Eye to Eye each and every Thursday. And real quick before we go, I failed to mention at the outset of the show the specials that I'm offering this month. So I just want to include these right here. And Roxy, if you put up the one for the speaking. So the March Madness special rate, $100 off remuneration when you make multiple bookings on Mondays in March. And then for the coaching special, we have, if you pay up front, and you can save more money. There's 33% off your first 6 months with a 12-month agreement. And this one's not exclusive to Monday, any point in March. So if you pay up front for a 12-month agreement, you'll get 33% off your first 6 months. And what will that cost amount to? What will the total bill look like? Reach out to me at brandon@connectandimpact.net and stating your interest, and we'll take it from there. I get in touch with you, leave your phone number. I'll follow up, and then we can talk more about this. And plus, if you have any questions about the coaching, the speaking, feel free to put that in the email or to ask me when we speak. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you again.
Wow, what an insightful show. Thanks for listening in and watching today. If you missed any part of today's show or any other episode, check it out on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Now take today's insight and utilize it. Incite yourself to action and to excellence in the week ahead, and join us again next Thursday and every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time for another insightful session with Brandon Lawson as he speaks to us and shares some more insights to incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV.